Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Let's give a warm welcome then for Maura Thompson from Sassy Media Group. All right, so let's get kind of the brief background of who you are and what is Sassy Media Group. Just in a few minutes, give us kind of the general overview.
So hi everyone. My name is Maura Thompson, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sassy Media Group. So Sassy Media Group started as a hobby, which I'm sure we'll kind of chat a little bit more later, in 2009. So it's 6 years kind of running now. Really, Sassy Media Group, at the end of the day, we're an online digital media company with the whole objective is providing information for primarily the female demographic. But with that being said, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of guys who visit our website because there's tons of information involved. But really, we cater to the female demographic on the Sassy side, lifestyle content, and then we have another website, Sassy Mama, which focuses on kind of the whole parenting community. And really, our job is really to tell people kind of what's the latest and greatest happening around not only Hong Kong, but we also have websites in Singapore, Dubai, and Australia.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, great, thank you. Mm-hmm. So let's go into a little more detail here. So give us the Sassy story. How did this get started? Where did it all come from?
Sure. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about because it amazes me to be even sitting here today talking to you when I think back to 6 years ago in terms of how Sassy began. When all is said and done, it really started as a hobby. We, myself and a number of friends, we're all new to Hong Kong right around the same period of time, and we were having kind of lunch one day with the idea of starting something where girls can connect to each other, make friends, and also know kind of what was happening in the city. I believe that a lot of businesses really come from a selfish point of view in the beginning, and Sassy, without a doubt, was created selfishly in that myself and my friends wanted to make more friends. I think at that point in time, it was created for a way that we can kind of connect with, other women here in Hong Kong. But at the same point in time, also kind of really having a destination where we can go online, other girls can go online and know new spots that were kind of opening up. There's so many restaurants and they change kind of on a regular basis. So we were having a hard time keeping on top of that. And then we also knew like other girls must be as well. So really we started to just blog about our daily lives in terms of restaurants that we went to the previous weekend, where we were getting our haircuts, various things like that. And then in addition to that, we started hosting monthly happy hours. So we ourselves selfishly could meet friends, but then also as a way for girls to connect with each other, meet each other, and kind of really enjoy the city, to its fullest potential.
Mm-hmm. So it's just a social thing at first.
It really was. It was, I think, in a way, it was definitely back in, in the kind of olden Sassy days. It was very much kind of highly influenced by a social kind of community. We still have that, today with the various events that we do. But that was really kind of a really strong kind of aspect of who we are. And then in addition to that, we had a very kind of like, old school blog spot that, we wrote on kind of daily on a regular basis. But for a while, we were kind of like all over the place. We had a blog, we had, a really kind of like rinky-dink website where we hosted our events. So for the first few months, we kind of just really kind of just poured our heart and soul into it and just kind of like hoped that people would start coming to the events. I always say that, we would host our Sassy Hour events, and these were our monthly happy hours, which we held at various bars around town. I think our first one, I think we had like 6 girls attending, and we were 3 of them. So we were kind of like, okay, let's try this again next month. And then next month, that 6 became 35. Mm-hmm. And then by month 3, it was like 75, then 100. So I think that really helped us to kind of, gain momentum in terms of knowing there's something here. It's not just us that need to make connections as it relates to maybe meeting girlfriends or feeling connected to the city that we're all living in. We could see that other people were really kind of yearning for the same sort of kind of like social community in some way, shape, or form. And then in addition to that, really I think that then helped us really on a regular basis start blogging about kind of like places that we've been to, things that we were loving about the city, and then slowly but surely that kind of also then took on like the momentum, on its own as well, which is quite neat.
So how did that transition from a website, a social thing, these get-togethers, to being a business?
So I think what happened was we were seeing girls coming to the Sassy Hour events, people starting reading the website. The word was starting to spread, kind of in terms of the community that we were tapping into. And then, I think what happened in terms of this light bulb moment of, oh, there might be something more to this, is then, businesses then started contacting us saying, we keep hearing Sassy. We keep hearing the name kind of floating around here or there. I mean, it wasn't kind of consistently. Everyone wasn't talking about Sassy, but like here or there, people would kind of contact us and say, we would love for you to come in and, we just opened a restaurant, come in and let us know what you think. Or we've just, opened a new nail salon, like we would love for you to kind of try it out. If you like it, write about it on the website. So that was, for us, kind of really this moment of, this could be something more. So that's really when we then, I think it was essentially we launched in March of 2009. And at the end of 2009, it was like, okay, let's actually, maybe like create a proper website. Let's put together a media kit. I didn't even know what a media kit was, right? Like we have to Google and figure that out. But I think that, at the end of 2009, we then say, okay, like in addition to kind of having this thing that is fulfilling our need and, a lot of the other kind of girls that were coming to our events, this could also be something else that we could potentially turn into a business.
Uh-huh. Was that kind of fun at first when people were giving you free stuff and saying, hey, come review this?
Yeah, I guess it is. I think that's I think the challenging part of creating a business, right? Because that's when the very difficult aspect of creating an editorial website and something that you're doing as a hobby then turns into a business. Because one of the things, and I'm very proud in terms of, I think we learned this very early on in terms of, okay, it's not always about the dollar signs, or it's not always about the quick dollar signs. As a young kind of like, business that has decided to make, the decision, we're going to create something here, you then have to then say, okay, well, how am I going to make money? So it was fun, of course. It's always fun, kind of being able to try new things. And, my favorite part of this job has always been, meeting other entrepreneurs or small businesses who really want to get their products out to kind of the Sassy readers. But that comes also with the challenge of then potentially having to say no if you feel that the product isn't right for your website. So it kind of goes like there's really fun parts of it, and then there's also kind of making sure that you stay true to your brand and what you're actually doing and your long-term plan.
Do you remember signing any particular deal for advertising where you said, wow, like this is like a real check, or like this is a real thing? This isn't just like somebody saying, oh, review my restaurant. This is like...
I think that number has changed over the years in terms of kind of like the real thing back then. It would be different now. But I think for me in the early days, to be honest, it's always like the people who have given us a chance and said, okay, like I'm gonna buy advertising for you, and we haven't even proven ourselves yet. So for me, I've always been amazed and still very thankful to the businesses here in Hong Kong that kind of gave us a shot and said, I'm going to advertise with you, and I believe in what you're doing, even though we weren't able to sit down and give them proper case studies yet. And I think I will always kind of say that that's the beauty of running a business in Hong Kong.
But they saw the potential in it.
Yes. But then now, there are times now, even myself, I have to pinch myself, and when my sales team, I have a great sales team now, they sell contracts, and it's like, amazing. But it's also kind of then, tied to amazing brands that we're working with, so it's a win-win all the time.
Now you had a co-founder in this, and so it was you and her running this at first. What was it like hiring your first employee that wasn't you or your co-founder?
So in the beginning, we started out, and it was literally in the beginning it was 3 of us, and we really were kind of it was sweat equity. Like, we were putting, our heart and souls into kind of running this as a business. So we didn't hire our first employee until a few years later, and it was our very first editor, which, it's music to my ears because I've never been the writer in the group. For a number of years I've, been counted on to write reviews, but I'm not, the best writer. So I think for me, it was slightly surreal. I think, that's when, to be honest, the hiring the first employee, that's when the pressure starts for me in terms of, okay, like now we need to pay someone's paycheck, and we need to make sure that, sales are coming in and sales are coming in the right way. For us to continue to pay the paychecks. And from a very early time, I've even told our sales team, it's not about the big paychecks, it's about the consistent, or the big sales, it's about the consistent one, so I can continue to pay. So I think for me now, like, it's literally the first employee, or when we finally got an office, and walking into the office and seeing like all the computers there, like, it's very, very, like, even to this day, very surreal to me.
And you have 14 employees today, right?
We have 14, so we have 12 girls sitting here in the Hong Kong office. So as I mentioned, we have Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, and then we have Australia, who kind of acts, separate from kind of the Sassy Media Group umbrella. So we have about 12 girls in Hong Kong, and then we have a team of, I would say, 5 in Singapore, and then 4 in Dubai. So it's starting to get, it's absolutely crazy now to see kind of how it's grown. And I've seen my role shift. I mean, it's been amazing for me to see my role shift kind of in the life story of Sassy Media Group, to the early days of, yes, when I had to write because there was no one else to do so, to then kind of focusing on more of the sales side, to then now kind of, working on managing our Hong Kong business, and then also kind of the strategy of the group in general. But it's really like the HR piece and the finance. I mean, it's like we're kind of growing so quickly. It's been quite, interesting to see kind of like where my time and energy is now spent compared to, previous years.
So what are all these 14 people doing? What are some examples of?
So how we have things set up in the Hong Kong office, we have Hong Kong is acting as the headquarter of Sassy Media Group. So it's split between girls who are truly focused on the Hong Kong market specifically, and then we have some job functions that are shared across all of the countries. So in each country that we operate in, we have an editorial team. So depending on the website that we have, so for instance, we have Sassy Hong Kong and Sassy Mama Hong Kong. So we'll have an editor responsible for each website. And then we have an editorial assistant, under them, kind of responsible for supporting kind of the editorial function. And then we have a partnerships team, and our partnerships team here in Hong Kong, they're mainly responsible for advertising. So, kind of working with, brands and products, and kind of, aligning ourselves in terms of making sure that we can kind of help those, brands and products, we can spread the word to our Sassy readers. And then in addition to that, they work on kind of growing our database, aligning ourselves with, great marketing opportunities, media sponsorships. And then in addition to that, we have our finance team and design. And then we also have a managing editor who is responsible, and this is a new role we created in late 2013. As we saw ourselves starting to grow, it got to a point where we needed to make sure that we were aligning ourselves, very similar in all the various countries. So we brought on a managing editor, Dervla, who really kind of oversees kind of all of our editorial content and make sure that it's, aligned correctly with each other.
How many pieces of content are you producing on a monthly basis, roughly, would you
say?
So
each day we post 2 new articles on the site. So that's, something that's, consistent throughout the week in all of our countries. And that, has been very interesting. That's really something that we have stayed consistent on throughout the beginning of time. I remember the early days of when, it would have just been, my partners that I started it with, like, we would give each other a hard time, even when people might not have been reading, of like, you didn't do your blog post today, like, when are you going to get it done? And I feel that has been a really great example of kind of, making sure that we're consistently posting on the site, so our readers know that there's always going to be something waiting for them on the Sassy websites. But at the same time, really learning the nice lesson that quality over quantity. So that has been something that, as we've grown as a brand, we've learned a little bit, because I think back in those early days, it was like, okay, 2 blog posts, you'd find something to plop up on the website, and now it's like literally like, we have an editorial calendar, it's planned through, everything that we do is, really kind of, making sure that it's, with quality in mind.
Interesting. How did you get into Dubai? I was there last year. I'm just curious, how did that start?
Good question. I've had the very good fortune of, even with Singapore, having business partners that like to move to various countries. So Singapore actually, and then I'll get to Dubai in a second. Singapore started when two of my business partners moved to Singapore separately. When we first started Sassy, it was something that, we were in Hong Kong, and then once you start to kind of like, get some momentum in terms of, things that we were doing in here, it was kind of then like, oh, where should we go next? Like, Singapore seems like the best next stop. And I remember researching Singapore, and I'm so happy that we didn't launch in Singapore when we started talking about it, because we weren't ready, and we didn't even know what we were doing in Hong Kong at that point in time. But you get in that mindset of like, what's next? We did a little bit of research, and I think then finally wisened up a little bit of like, all right, we need to figure this out before we jump into something else. And then it kind of worked out in that right when we were really starting to kind of like get the model right, when we were starting to hire employees, my business partner moved to Singapore, and then another did as well. So that was timed really nice in terms of, okay, let's actually start in Singapore. And then about a year after my one business partner moved to Singapore, her husband got transferred to Dubai. And then of course, then we're like, Dubai. So I always say like, I'm always kind of like gearing up for where her husband's gonna move next, because that might be our next country. So for me, it has been really nice though to be able to kind of expand our brand through my business partners kind of organically moving somewhere else, because it's been really nice to be able to launch somewhere else, really kind of having someone on the ground behind the scenes, knowing the ins and outs of the business. So that has been quite nice. And then we're in Australia, and that has been, that's an interesting story in that that's more of operating as a licensee model for us. And it was started by two girls who used to live in Hong Kong. They used to attend our Sassy events. They moved back to Australia and the Gold Coast, and they emailed us, out of the blue. We get a lot of emails, from girls who have either were living in Hong Kong but moved, somewhere else. And we got this email saying, I wish that there was something like this in the Gold Coast. Would you ever be interested? And so, we wrote back, and it was literally like, having a baby. Like 9 months later, Sassy Australia was born. And so that it was our first kind of opportunity to start the brand with people running it outside of kind of like who actually like are my business partners. So that has been interesting, and for me it was really great because there was already that connection to the brand. They already loved it, they already were connected to it. So it's been, that's been an interesting story in terms of how that even came to be.
Now you're originally from Pennsylvania in the States. Can you see this being transplanted back to the US at some point?
That's what, I guess people always ask that. I was living in New York before, coming here. And I think for right now, it's always something, of course, like my dream is to have, Sassy everywhere. But I think for right now, I think what works really nice with the brand is that kind of like Asia connection. And I think for here, it's really nice kind of starting something, and there has never been any, like, at least in Hong Kong, there at this point in time, obviously there's other great websites, but it works really well for our model, that small kind of like local content. So I think for right now, I'm not ever ruling it out, but I think, focusing on kind of this like, kind of area probably makes the most sense for.
Sounds like it's all been pretty natural and organic the way that it's spread. So who knows?
Yeah, definitely, who knows? I think, for last year, we spent a lot of time expanding. So I think, it's kind of this game as I'm finding, as you grow, right? You grow and you spend a lot of effort in terms of growing, and it's really great to kind of see kind of the expansion. But then you then have to come back to your roots and make sure that you're refining the product that you have in your, kind of current market. So for us, it really is that natural, and making sure it's not even also kind of like where to next. We want to make sure that, the product would work anywhere that, we would go next. But it's also making sure that, we're feeling really great about the people that we're partnering with. So I think that's, a really kind of important part of the picture as well, in addition to kind of like making market sense.
Okay. Now let's get this straight. So you've got SassyHongKong.com, and then you've got Sassy Mama.
Yes.
So explain the relationship between Sassy Mama and Sassy Hong Kong.
Of course. So basically, websites are part of this, the same umbrella. We're all kind of part of the same group, the same team. Sassy Hong Kong, where the brand Sassy was born first. At that point in time, that's where we were, in our life story. We were, out and about, kind of, just really wanting to hit up the latest bars and the restaurants, and, I guess had the luxury of being able to enjoy kind of all of that stuff. And so we started with Sassy, and then Sassy Mama was born when my business partner Hester became pregnant with her first baby. So I think for us at that point in time, Sassy Hong Kong was already a business. And I think for us, it really was kind of that natural progression. And again, probably selfish reasons of Hester then said, okay, well, now I want to, I need a resource where I can kind of find, where to go, what to do, being a parent in Hong Kong. So for us, we then knew our audience, the girls that were reading our websites would ultimately, not at the same time, but at different points, then kind of potentially become mothers themselves. So for us, it really was that natural progression to then start kind of a sister site to Sassy Hong Kong, really focusing on kind of like the great stuff to do as a parent in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of been the difference between the two. It's really like Sassy Mama is, kind of for parenting. Sassy Hong Kong is really for finding the latest and greatest things that are happening in Hong Kong, whether you're a mom, whether you're not a mom, whether you're a guy, a girl, like it really is kind of like that kind of go-to destination for where's the like best restaurant to eat in town. Sassy will have it.
Okay. Talk a little bit more about the draw of the website for guys. What can a guy find on the website?
Good question. We've, from the very beginning, back then it was kind of like secret, like we would have guys be like, oh yeah, I read your website, or really sometimes like the girlfriend would kind of like tell me that the guy reads the website, but like he would say, don't say that I said this. So I think over the years, we kind of definitely had that like kind of like girly kind of focus. We still do, but right now it's definitely, our most popular category is the eat and drink page. And both guys and girls like to eat and drink, and I think for guys in particular, I think that, I don't know, I might be generalizing here, like they want an easy way to make a decision of like, okay, like what's hot right now? Like, where should I be going to dinner? If you check Sassy, like, the answer's already there. So I think they like just having that like, okay, like I want a recommendation, where do I go? So that, and then we recently launched a wedding section on the site. And I think a lot of guys are now finding themselves there for, what do I do? Like, how do I find a ring? So I think there's just, a lot of information. And we have our weekender, what's on in Hong Kong. Like, so it's not just, for, where to get the best manicure. Like, you literally can find, like, these are the events that are happening in Hong Kong. Like, so I think it's just, guys are probably more kind of structured in terms of the areas of the website they're going to. Again, I'm generalizing, but I think that's kind of what
It's ringing true so far.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, guys do like structure, checklists. Yeah. Guys loves checklists. Yeah. So looking back now, like when we were talking before, you were saying you never planned on being an entrepreneur. You never thought about starting a business. But now that you look back upon your childhood, your family, your upbringing, do you see anything that your parents did that you feel like that kind of facilitated this or prepared you or gave you the confidence to do this?
I think, oh wow. I think what I've learned, I guess, part of, for me at least, what I'm finding about being an entrepreneur is it is hard work, man. Like, it is really difficult to kind of start your own business and kind of just deal with like the challenges that you're going to be getting thrown like from all different areas. So you have to really, be persistent in terms of, wanting to make sure that it's growing. I think in terms of like, I've grown up, like I absolutely adore my family. They've been super supportive kind of my whole life. And I think probably the one thing that I guess I've grown up with that has been very, constant in my life is that determination. Mm-hmm. That's probably, without a doubt, my dad lost his job when he was 40, I was in 8th grade. So like I saw him, and I was at, a very young age, and that was challenging for me as, a 12-year-old to try to figure that out. But like he kind of had to go through this like really like down period of like, how am I going to do this? And then, I saw him then find another job, and then really kind of, like change course, and direction. So I think probably thinking about that question, I've learned a lot about, determination and keep at it, even when like you're down and you don't think that you can keep going. So I think that has probably influenced me a lot in terms of seeing that in my dad.
Have there been moments like that for you in the business when things were down and you were ready to give up, but you kept on going?
Gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think one of the things when, you're running your own business, and, especially like I look at Sassy and I absolutely adore kind of like talking, on, panels like this, because it's really nice for myself to even hear like, oh yeah, we did that, I forgot. Because you can kind of get in periods where you're just literally like, it's so overwhelmed by all the detail and growing the business that you could be like, I'm not sure I can keep doing this. And then you're like, but it's doing really well. Like, why would you even think that? So it's constantly a talking yourself in and out of like, what am I doing? But I think for me, I've always said that, even with my business partner, Hester, I feel that we've kind of like also like you get into a groove with whoever you're working with, and I feel like we've kind of gone through those ups and downs at separate times, which has been really nice, because then you can have someone say like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Look what we're building. But yeah, I would be lying if I didn't sit here and say, there's days where I question like, can I do this? Because as you said, like I wasn't born to be an entrepreneur. Or maybe I was and I just didn't realize it, but there's a lot of times where you question yourself and the decisions you're making, whether you're tough enough. But I guess since I'm sitting here, 6 years later, I've probably had, more of the you can do it days than I don't think I can do it.
So what gets you really excited about it? I mean, do you like running the business? Do you like the community, the social, everything? I mean, what gets you excited to wake up and go to work on this?
This is what, this is what gets me excited. It's really, I think for me now, building the brand, what I love so many years into it now is seeing how, in a way, like we still kind of are able to connect with our readers. So for me, the magic ticket is to be able to like have events for girls that, yes, like we would be, working with an amazing partner that's, wanting to kind of, spread their message to Hong Kong. But really kind of seeing that kind of like engagement, interaction. And then of course, it's seeing it replicated in other countries. Like that's insanely exciting to be able to know that the Sassy brand is kind of, being replicated and staying true to kind of how we started. But really it's talking about the story and engaging with, the readers that are reading the site and kind of hearing from them like what they want and being able to adjust from there. MPF, processing MPF is not like what excites me these days, so it's stuff like this.
What's your husband think of all this?
He's so happy. He has been literally, I think when you're starting your own business, even if you have business partners, the person at home probably like hears about it the most. So he probably could be sitting up here and telling and really doing this for me because he knows the Sassy story inside and out. He has been insanely supportive. It's been, I think, in the beginning when you're starting a company, it's hard, right? It's hard, in terms of, you don't have money coming in, but you're spending all of your time on it. So I think, he's actually been like amazingly supportive in understanding from the, pretty much the beginning of, okay, Maura's spending all of her time on this. She's not making, money in the early days now, but it's been like a nice little like thing that he's accepted, like, this is my job, and he's been really cool with it, to the point where he like also says that I work more hours than he does, which I don't believe, but yeah.
Have you put any money into this? Has it?
Yeah, so we have always, I guess, like in the Sassy way, have kept things very lean. When we, as I mentioned, earlier, and I always am very honest that it was a hobby. So we didn't like have a meeting on day one and say, okay, we're all gonna like, put all of this money into it. Like, as I said, we had a blog spot and a, Rinky website. So we put a little bit of money in. And then we were fortunate in that we weren't in a time crunch to say, okay, like we need to start making money immediately. So we were able to grow it organically, but we did put money into it. But it wasn't loads of money.
But it's personal money. You haven't raised funding.
Nope. Yeah. So everything that has ever been put into Sassy has been personal money from myself, business partners, I mean, you never know. At some point in time, I think it becomes a different story too. Like once you start to expand, and once you start to have, 14 girls sitting in the Hong Kong office, rent to pay, it starts to be a lot. So who knows in terms of ever kind of looking to kind of an outside investor. I think if the opportunity seems right and it's a good fit, that's definitely something that we'd consider. But to this point right now, it's been fully funded through us.
If you were going back, you started this 6 years ago. So if you could go back today, 6 years, what are some of the things that you would tell your former self that you know today but you didn't know back then?
I think probably one of my biggest things is don't be afraid to ask questions. When we started, when it actually became to the point where it's like, okay, like let's create a business, I think that, I don't know, I guess I was a bit nervous in terms of, okay, like I felt that I should probably know more in terms of like how to start a business, and everyone says, oh, in Hong Kong, starting a business is easy, and it is. But then because everyone said that, if I had a question, I'm like, well, it's easy, I should know this. So I think I tried to sometimes try to figure it out myself, which is good. Like it's actually good to like do your research and try hard to figure it out. But sometimes I think I didn't admit that I didn't know a question. And I would go to a networking event and everyone's like handing out business cards and I should say everyone seems to know what they're doing. Like everyone knows how to file the taxes, the best accountant to go to, what all of the company ordinances are, and when to submit them. And a lot of people don't, right? And I think it took me some time to kind of figure out that other people don't. And I always say like one of the most the greatest thing was sitting at a lunch with a fellow entrepreneur, and I feel like maybe I let my guard down and was like, I don't know about X, Y, and Z, and she was like, I don't know either. And it was like, oh, thank goodness. And I think for me, and I still learn it to this, day. And now I sit here and say, oh, it's, we've been running Sassy for 6 years. I should know the answer to this. And then I have this little voice in the back of my head saying like, don't screw up again. Just ask questions. I think that for me is 100% kind of the most important thing.
How has having a child changed things for the business?
Yeah. Man, so Eve was born, a year and a half ago. She's 20 months, and it's been hard. It's the sort of thing where I had absolutely no idea how hard it was going to be to juggle until I was in those shoes. My business partners pretty much all had kids, and I saw them juggling, but it wasn't until it happens to you that you actually then realize. So I had Eve, and then I think I spent a number of days, hours, apologizing to all of my business partners, being like, I'm sorry, I had no idea, if I ever acted like I didn't. It's been hard. I think one of the things that is great about running your own business is you're able to dictate your hours, and I got to the point where our team was building, so I said, okay, I'm going to do part-time. But then one of the, also then prior to getting to part-time is like, yeah, maternity leave, but you kind of don't. So, a week after having Eve, I was on, our shareholder call, and we had some issues that happened. So you kind of you can't say no. Like you can't be like, hey boss, I'm on maternity leave, because I have to sort that out. And right now it's been very hard, just kind of trying to juggle being there for her and being there for the business, because I actually I adore, all of the people that work for us and kind of what we're doing, but it's hard trying to go from play school to work to this and that. So it's a constant struggle that I'm trying to sort out. One of the, I've heard advice from, one of the women here in Hong Kong that I absolutely adore and admire. She once said, you have to treat your kids, like you would any important business meeting. I would never miss a meeting that I have on my calendar for Sassy, right? So I think for me, that has been really good in terms of if Eve has something, it's just like any other meeting, and I need to kind of figure out the best way to juggle. It's been hard.
Now, how come if I were interviewing you and you were a man, I would probably never ask how did kids affect the business? Why do we ask that question to women and not men?
I think I don't know. I think it's I can ask more from or answer more from an entrepreneur perspective. I think when you're an entrepreneur, and then I'll answer from a woman's perspective. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to juggle everything. I mean, you're kind of literally you have the liberty of not having a set schedule, so your life in general is kind of just all over the place. I think for myself, from my own point of view, it's harder for women because I also didn't believe that this existed before. This whole mama guilt thing, I really just didn't think it. I was like, whatever. I really now believe that they inject you like before you leave the hospital. So I think that is something that...
Explain mama guilt for those who may not have children
yet.
yet.
Mama guilt is this just sense that like you're just doing like, if you're not with your kid, then you feel guilty that you're not with them, or you're just doing so, because I'm at work, like I'm missing out X, Y, and Z. Like it's just like in your mind and you feel horrible about it. It's literally constantly just something that's hovering. Even if you're able, like even if I'm at work and able to concentrate on work, I still feel bad that I'm not there. Whereas my husband, who absolutely adores our daughter, like he's the best at it in the world, like he gets like, yes, he gets guilty, but like he's able to leave and focus on work. And then he'll be able to come home and be like 100% on Eve. So I think like with women, I think we try to do it all. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably, tends to lead to just, sometimes feeling like it's really difficult to kind of manage everything.
Are there any other challenges that are unique to being a female entrepreneur that you've found? Or that you think might be unique?
No, I think for me, I feel that I've come across, I guess it's more kind of entering motherhood that I've, realized, oh, this is hard to manage X, Y, and Z. Prior to that, I think, especially in a place like Hong Kong, there's so many female entrepreneurs here. Mm-hmm. I feel that I meet, and maybe it's just the business that I'm in, I feel like I meet more business or women entrepreneurs doing something. So I think as long as you're kind of like, have your stuff together, I personally haven't been impacted by kind of me, being a woman and having any issues with that.
Are there any advantages to being a woman, female entrepreneur, that you've experienced?
I don't know. I think I guess there might be in terms of, at least for what I'm doing in my brand, I think it's helped maybe in a little bit to be a female entrepreneur, kind of doing something for women. I don't know. I'm having a very difficult time answering that, so maybe I don't think there's any advantages or disadvantages.
Okay, that's fine. So who are some of the business people that you look up to? Are there any people, you said that there was a woman that you admire here in Hong Kong. Are there other people that have been examples for you, mentors that have helped you out, and how have they helped you out?
Yeah, I think, even speaking about this particular woman, her name, Lori Granado, do you guys know Magnolia Private Kitchen? Absolutely, like she's amazing. So I would say that she would probably be someone that I look up to for a number of reasons. A number of reasons actually. One of the first things is I feel that I remember marching into her offices and be like, "Hi, we're Sassy. Work with us. Do something." And we really didn't know what we were talking about. And she's very open and open with us and say, "Okay, tell me, what are you doing? Like, how does this work?" What I really love about her, and I think it's something that I maybe aspire to be, is that she is an extremely, extremely nice woman. She's an extremely nice woman who is a great business person as well. She's seen her ups and downs of running multiple businesses throughout her years in Hong Kong, and businesses that have had great success and businesses that have might not have worked, and she had to move on, or challenges that she's had to get through. So I think for me, and really to keep it local, and someone who I guess everyone here can kind of really look at her story. She's inspired me in that, first of all, I think I have the tendency, and this is something that I deal with, in that I can be too nice. I can be too nice maybe in business. So I think I admire a lot in terms of, and I guess maybe you can't be too nice in business, but in terms of that, I admire that she's an extremely nice person. She's willing to help anyone out, but at the end of the day also she knows, okay, this is the best interest of my business, or you can't talk to me like that, and this is how we need to kind of work together. So I admire that in terms of kind of learning that to find balance of being a nice person, and then also kind of making sure that doesn't kind of become something negative in terms of running a successful business.
Mm-hmm. That's great. What are some of the top tips that you would give to young entrepreneurs or people who are just starting out in entrepreneurship? What are some of the lessons you've learned that they can take home?
Okay, besides ask questions, I think really tapping into your community. I think, for me, growing Sassy, I couldn't have done it without, really kind of reaching out to people that were maybe doing something similar to what we were doing in the very beginning, really kind of creating this little network of how can we work with each other? How can you help Sassy in terms of getting the name out? How can we help you in terms of like what you're doing? So I think, for me, it's not aligning yourself with, if you're starting a clothing company, it's not like, okay, let me find another clothing, company that may also be starting. It's like, okay, like who else is, who's doing, something in the media, or who's a makeup artist, and who's a hair person, because I'm gonna need to have a photo shoot. So it's really kind of creating this little group where in the beginning you can kind of help each other out, because in the beginning no one has money, right? You've spent all of your money building a website or doing X, Y, and Z. So I think it's if you know that you can't do a lot in terms of like advertising in the beginning, like how do you like creatively like get the name out? So I think that is definitely something I think that could help. And align yourself with people who could be passionate about what you're doing. I think one of the things that I've always seen with the Sassy story that have, there's a number of different kind of peaks in terms of where I say like, okay, like, and then the path changed this way. And for me, as we're saying, hiring your first employee, expanding to other countries. But for us, as I said, I'm not a writer, right? So why do you want to read my food reviews? No one, I'm going to say, oh, everything was great, but you really want to hear from a foodie, someone who like lives and dies for like, what's new. So I think for me, it was actually then bringing in people, writers, contributors, bloggers who are passionate about a specific area. So I think also, again, tapping into what might not be your strengths and finding people to work with you that can then kind of bring you to another level by helping you with that, I think is helpful. And also like making sure, and I've been very fortunate about this, that you have a business partners who have kind of similar visions. I think when I think about specifically my business partner who I started Sassy with, I have a number of business partners now, but it's like these people, you're going to be living with them in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not like in your house, but like they are literally going to become a part of your lives. You're going to have good days with them, bad days, but it's really making sure that you're able to kind of figure out like how can we best work with each other, because that's super important.
Well, we're going to open it up for a Q&A here in a moment, but before we go to that, is there anything else that we should have discussed that we didn't ask that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. I think for me, it's really, I don't know, and I would love to hear from you guys in terms of where you are, like why you're here tonight. I think the most important thing that I can at least share about my story is looking back. It's starting, right? Mm-hmm. It's having an idea, not being terrified of it, but not being super like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing, and jumping 5 steps ahead. It's starting. It's like taking it step by step, tapping into the people around you who can help you, ask questions, but don't start, but start, and because I think if you just think and plan, you could just be sitting in step 1 forever.
Yeah. Okay, so question 1, is it profitable? Question 2, what are the demographics of your audience?
So I'm happy to say that yes, it is profitable. So we haven't had to get to a point where we're injecting money, but so it is to the point where probably a few years ago I wasn't looking at sales targets, I wasn't looking at payroll. It's a different story now, right? So I have to sit down at the beginning of the year with my kind of partnerships team and say, okay, like this is what we did last year, this is kind of what we're forecasting this year. We have to go through a whole budget process, really with the intent that we need to make sure that the sales are coming in, that I can pay the salaries, that I can keep the lights on. So we are at the point we're not injecting money, which is good. But it does get you to the point where you then, for instance, today it's like, okay, sales are slow in the summer. People go on summer holidays. Like, you need to make sure that, you're kind of like bringing in the sales, you're able to pay everything, but there's always that buffer in place, and we always have like, a number of months that we're, we know that we have the cushion. So that's a good thing, but at the same time, when you expand, you have to hire staff immediately. So that has been quite differently than how we started Hong Kong, where we kind of grew organically. So that's kind of, it's an exercise that we always need to make sure that we're doing, because it's like, okay, we're starting with this staff. So for instance, like, when we started Singapore, we invested money in Singapore, but that was kind of from the group. So at this point in time, we are profitable from that standpoint. And then in terms of demographic for Sassy, it's typically between, the average, reader would be between like the ages of 25 to 35. And then Sassy Mama, that's slightly older, so it's probably like, from the 30 to 40 demographic. We're seeing, Sassy also kind of, the younger kind of 22, 23-year-old crowd as well, is also becoming, quite influential. But it's really kind of that middle kind of 20s, early 30s has always been kind of like our dominant readership base.
So do you have an exit strategy? Do you have evaluation for the company?
So exit strategy. So I think that's something that, of course, I also, again, would be lying in terms of like, okay, like we never thought about that. It's something that it would always, kind of be something that we look at. My goal for the business at the end of the day is to build like a nice brand. I'm super passionate about it right now, so it would be hard for me to ever, kind of let go of it. But with that being said, again, just like, kind of going into any new market, it's definitely something if, there are interested partners kind of that are looking and thinking, Sassy is attractive, we would definitely chat to them and see kind of where the synergies are. In terms of valuation of the company, we have kind of looked at, some exercises in terms of that, but, to be honest, I'm not the most financial savvy of the group, so I feel like that's sometimes always something that I get a bit like, about, but it is, that's definitely something that we're talking about and looking at, just to kind of at least kind of have our ducks in a row as we become more sophisticated as a company, and and people start approaching us and asking questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Maura, for coming in. Let's give her a round of applause.